Hello and welcome back to You and I for the Kenai. This is Aaron. We're here today with Cobran, Piera, and Ramblin' Rick.
I'm back.
And today we're starting a brand new series that we're pretty excited about today. So as a lot of you guys might remember, we've started doing these podcasts just about a year ago, 13 months ago, June, July. And now we're starting our 1 year later series. So we released SJ's podcast late July last year, and thankfully she's back with us again today to talk about what's changed in her recovery, how recovery's progressed, and how just her life's progressed, and just to catch up with us today. We've actually scheduled this podcast for 10. It's now 10:50. We've been sitting here talking for about an hour now, so
good stuff.
Yeah, that's how much we like SJ. So just to start this off, to give you guys some background. So last year when we talked to you...
One second. You can, I'll just kind of interject real quick, ramble a little bit. Our hope is that you guys can maybe go, if you haven't heard, so this is SJ, and we're going to be recording with other people that we've recorded with before. And the idea is that if you haven't heard this person's recovery story or the other people's recovery stories that we will record with in the future, that you may go back and maybe listen to their first one to kind of start that, I guess, like virtual, like getting to know kind of thing, and then listen to the new one and just kind of see how their life has progressed. Because the first recovery stories, it's kind of it's a big picture, and now we're just kind of looking at a year, but we're hoping that can with a little more time and having already covered the background, that we can get kind of a real life picture and a kind of a little more detailed explanation as to like what does 1 year look like. And as Aaron said, we've just been talking for like 50 minutes, and we're just kind of catching up on the year, and there's a lot that takes place. So yeah, back to you.
Back to you. Oh yeah, to start off, I think one of the, I guess it's personal, but we'll start it here anyway. One of the most exciting things is last time we talked to you, you were living in the Transitional Living, right? Mm-hmm. And since you've gotten your own place, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's start there.
Being in the Transitional Living is I've always expressed to me just how important it is, because, so many people get out of treatment and end up having to go exactly where they came from. And it's many times not healthy, it's not safe. They can be in abusive situations or whatever. And so having that aftercare for the aftercare, which a few years back I actually wrote letters to try to help Serenity House get that funding to make the Transitional Living Center and make that happen. So having that aftercare for the aftercare is just super important, because, it's like you're fresh out of treatment, you're still pretty fresh, you're still pretty raw. To have a safe place to figure out like what your next step is just so important. Yeah. And also the Transitional Living just kind of gives you a little more sense of community. Mm-hmm. And they really help you with your resources, let you know like, hey, this is what your options are. And while I was there, I obtained employment, and yet was still able to help with, and do my stuff with Change for the Kenai, which, like, I don't know, just everything you do just is a little bit, is just building a little bit more foundation for yourself. Yeah. So that was actually extremely helpful. And I, just kind of put that energy out there that I was looking for a place. The last place I had lived at in Kenai was just what I said. It was, people were like breaking into the laundry room to get high and things like that. It just wasn't a really good apartment complex.
Sure.
So I was a little bit nervous, like, where am I going to live? I wanted it to be safe for my boy. And I was really, really blessed to have a friend of a friend that just so happened to be looking for a neighbor. And so, yeah, so I got a nice little duplex, and I was able to, being at TLC was really helpful, because they helped me with, okay, like, this is what you're going to need to do for your Alaska housing. This is what you're going to need to pull together. And I don't know, deadlines and paperwork freak me out to this
Yeah.
day. I'm like,
Yeah.
when?
Right.
What time? Are
Yeah.
you sure? Like, yeah, it just freaks me out. I just panic. And so it's nice to just be able to have someone just kind of guide you just a little bit. You know what I mean? They still want you to like, assume responsibility, but sometimes it's like, I mean, you're nervous and you know what I mean? That everything feels brand new. And so, yeah, I was able to get somewhere that's kind of on the outskirts of town. It's a very kind of religious neighborhood, if you will. Like everyone
Sure.
belongs to this church at the front of it. So you leave your kid's bike at the end of the driveway. It's going to be exactly where you left it when you came back. There's not a lot of
Sure.
riffraff. Everybody waves in the neighborhood. The other day, I was searching for my phone and drove into the ditch.
Oh.
And I had literally 3 different neighbors running up there oh, SJ. And it was literally 20 feet from my house.
Oh.
And it was just too much dirt and gravel for me to pull back out. But you know what I mean? The neighbors are so nice and they're like, oh girl, don't even worry about it. And I'm just like, oh, so embarrassing. But you know what I mean? That's the type of community it is. So I'm really grateful to have been able to go there and obtain that housing. We have goats in the back and
Nice.
You love the goats.
Got goats in the back.
It's so trendy to have a goat these days.
it is.
Yeah.
It's trendy.
SJ is a big fan of the ghosts. Every time I see her, there's a new goat story.
Just making devil horns right now.
You know what?
Can't see it.
I think I'm a Capricorn. I'm already a goat, and I don't know.
What are Capricorns like? I've known people who are every other sentence is well, dude, she's a Taurus, so dumb.
Yeah,
And
right.
I'm like,
and they depend on that.
I don't know what
Here's
that
the
means.
thing is,
Yeah. Well, I'm
I've
Pisces, so-
learned while I was in TLC from another person that was staying there, that you have on each side of your sign you have a rising sign and a setting sign, and both of mine are Geminis. And so as a Capricorn, I found out that I'm kind of an enigma. I don't really fit the criteria of a normal Capricorn. So
Nice.
yeah. So when I read my horoscope, I'm like, psh, yeah, right.
If
You're
it
just
wasn't
like,
like,
this is
if
a
it
bunch of
wasn't
BS.
if it wasn't some
In my way.
horoscope stuff, that would sound so pretentious. I'm not a normal
Yeah.
Capricorn. I got both Gemini on the setting sign and the rising sign, both Gemini, bro.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah.
I'm not your normal
Yeah.
Capricorn.
Well, I read a lot of things that Capricorns are super fake and stuff like that, and I definitely do not feel that I fit that.
No.
Yeah.
I'm Scorpio. I feel like that sounds alpha, like a scorpion. Scorpio, bro. I'm gonna get a scorpion tattoo. Yeah, thanks. Because I'm a
Oh,
scorpion.
What's your sign? You're like
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah, heck yeah. Check it out.
Man, you should have seen Eric getting his first tattoo. Dude. It was so funny. He's got this little one right on his forearm here, and he's all writhed up in pain. He's doing knees to chest and
It hurts so bad. I never wanted to get another one. It was really bad.
it was super funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
What?
Go ahead.
Is that your only tattoo?
Yeah. It was until I got my scorpion.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a good time. So yeah, back to SJ. Back to you. And more things that have changed. You've changed in your job's changed too, right? So kind of give us a quick background on what you were doing when we first talked, right? You were working
I
nights.
started at as the auditor, the night auditor for a hotel bar restaurant.
So what did you
in
do?
Kenai.
What did you do? Look over sales and things like that, or
Well,
what's
yeah,
an
I go
auditor?
in-
I know, if it's hey, buddy, you're getting audited. People are
Well, no, because
"Ooh."
every night they audit the day before.
Okay.
So every night they go over and make sure that everything balances.
Sure.
So I'd go in at midnight. I'd get off at 8 a.m. Definitely, that was a big change for me. It gave me just so much respect for people that work that shift. Whether they're because my son's dad like alternates nights and days, and I'm like, wow, this is
Hardcore.
yeah, it really is. And then Wednesday morning when I got off work, I would literally go and do the booth all day. Yeah, so they were pretty forgiving at the Transitional Living, like, hey, no, she don't have to come to this meeting, because I'd be like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like, just, like, rough, and they're like, you know, SJ, you just go ahead and get some more rest, because I would just be, like, so tired.
Food here sucks.
So, I had to take a test. I'm not very good at math, only because it's so structured, you know.
It's not crazy.
Yeah, it ain't my thing, man. It's like too straightforward. Anyways, so when I took the test to get the job, he's like, I don't care how you get the answers. I don't care. Just, you know, get the answers. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, screenshot, like sent it to my buddy Jeff, and Jeff's like wrote it, you know, mentioned like screenshotted it back, but it was only a couple questions that it was like a lot of percentages, and, you know, if it's this much percentage for the bar, but yet they had food, which doesn't have a tax, like, you know, what, you know, so I was like, So, so I ended up getting the job, and I just knew that it wasn't, of course, my first pick to be working overnight, but I really wanted that, that routine to start coming into my life. I hadn't worked for a while. I was working only jobs where I could show up however, whenever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
If I did show up at all.
Yeah.
You know, I knew that was going to be something that I was going to need to you know, progress in my recovery is you know, being responsible and being accountable and showing up on time and those types of things. And getting that job really did, like, build my confidence. And I was the manager there I've known actually for a while, and I was able to be honest and share, like, hey, you know, I got a DUI, and I want to build my life back up, and so he knew that I still had classes to go to and things to do like that. So I was only working 2 days a week, 2 nights a week, and you know, the manager's like, hey, she's definitely got some customer service, you know, skills and people skills, like, we're gonna, you know, move you to a different shift. And so I started working the 4 to 12, and then ended up on the day shift, which is where I'm at now. But
You like that more?
well, being a single mom,
Yeah.
it's very helpful, especially like if you get help with your daycare and stuff like that. Like, they're like, yeah, we don't have daycare from midnight to 8 a.m. Yeah, so you know what I mean? It's all just kind of...
Yeah, so you would have to have your kids, like, somebody stay at your house, your kids stay...
And when I started the audit position,
That would be
I didn't
hard.
have my son as much as I have him now.
Sure.
So it was a little bit easier for me to, like, take
Your
that
son
position.
caught a fish last week or something, didn't he?
Yeah.
I saw that on Instagram.
Yes, yeah, it was
liked
amazing.
it.
I forgot how cool it is to watch kids catch fish. Like, it is so fun. So recently I had a little something happen that I felt I could have let affect my recovery. Was they wanted me to go back to the audit position. They've trained like 4 different people, and nobody can seem to get it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I cheated on my test to get this job. If I can get it, like, anybody can get it. And the thing about, like, an audit like that is you don't have to be good at math. You just kind of have to be, like, kind of like
Organized.
a forensic accountant. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like taking information from here, putting it here, and getting that final answer. And if you can't get that answer, having the, like, common sense to be like, okay, there's a discrepancy here. Like, this doesn't look right. And I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like a puzzle, and I was good at it. I was pretty good at it. They wanted me to go back, and I said, look, you know what I mean? Like, my life's changed since then. It's not going to work. Oh, please just think about it. And I'm like, I already know. Like, it's not going to work out.
You're like, thought about it.
And, like, this you know, lady at my work was like, hey, I'll watch him. And I'm like, oh, honey, like, you're on ankle monitor. I mean, I know you'll be home, but, like, bless you. I love you to death. But I don't know. I just, you know, I don't know. Like, so as I'm looking at the schedule, I'm like, 2 days. And I start flipping through the weeks. I'm like, 2 days. I'm like, whoa, what's up with this? Well, I thought for sure you would just go ahead and take that audit position. I'm like, I felt kind of backed into a corner. I felt like, you know, I was butthurt. I had just gotten this like review on Google and Yelp and whatever. This guy was like, "Hey, I've never even been to this place, but if the any other employees are and the customer service is like the front desk lady, you know, put my name and it's got to be the most wonderful place ever." And I was just like, oh, you know what I mean? Like I invested. I felt invested in the job, and I was butthurt. And but you know, I've been taught in my recovery is like sometimes doors have to close for something else to open. And so I applied for a peer support job here at the hospital, doing exactly what I love, and that's helping other people like me. And so I'm just kind of waiting for that to go through, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, you'll be. I mean, without knowing too much about like the job 100%, but I feel like I understand a little bit. You'll be great at that, and you know, you're so approachable. You know, like. There's not a lot of people I just flex around, you know, but I just feel like I can just be I can just be the best me, you know?
You know, it's kind of a blessing and a curse. Like, I mean, I've been in line, like, at Walmart, and, you know, the person in front of me starts telling me, like, about her autistic son and all this stuff, and I look behind me, and I'm like, are you talking to me? Like, people just tell me really personal things about themselves, and I'm like, I don't know, like, you know, but it can be a blessing and a curse. But I'm hoping to, you know, bring that, and like I said, going on that trip to the that education conference was so eye-opening for me, and just kind of like pushed me a little bit more, like.
So you went, because they don't know, you went to Ohio, right? And that was for a big like addiction conference / education.
The
forum,
Ohio
right?
Opioid and Other Drug Education Conference.
And I would think,
in
you know,
Columbus.
like when I've gone to different kind of like conferences or trainings of some type, it like, for me, what I found is it's like an identity thing. It's like, okay, like this is part of like, with that, not like who I am, but a little bit. It's like, oh man, like this is something that I like care about. This is what I do. Like Eric cares about this, or Eric does this type of work. Yeah. You know, it like kind of reminds you of like where you started getting going, you know, and part of it was like, as you have identified with it over time. And I feel like as that happens, like you're like, oh man, it reminds you like why you're investing in this.
Yeah.
And it's because it's part of who you are at this point.
Yeah.
So you're there, and it's like, it's because those things I think are renewing.
Yeah,
They're
and just seeing
refreshing.
it on such on a much larger scale,
Yep.
and seeing that these problems are not isolated to your community. It's everywhere you go.
That's one thing that I wish I had, because I hear opioid epidemic and I look around and it's bad, you know? But and I can, like, in my head, right, like, intellectualize the idea that, like, this is happening in other places just as bad, if not worse. But until for me, it seems like it's hard for me to fathom that this is everywhere. And it is, you know, it's everywhere. But it's hard for me to, like, picture just, like, everywhere is this bad, you know? And it would be, I think, to see that, it would be a different experience. I mean, a renewing in like almost not a great way, but eye-opening.
Well, being passionate about helping people, realizing, hey, this is a huge concern, not just here, but in a lot of places. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was blown away just at all the cool things I learned. My absolute, what really yanked on my heartstrings was, you know, I was learning all this stuff, but there was a guy, and he was a child counselor, and he counsels children who have lost their parents to an overdose, or their parents are incarcerated from drug abuse or whatever. And he was showing the artwork that children drew on what addiction looks like to them, and I had goosebumps, and I was like fanning my face because I just wanted to cry the whole time, because it's so it just impacts. And I don't know, I saw that meme the other day. It was like, I don't know, there'll be like a similarity between kids right now that are, I don't know, like in junior high, who have lost a parent to overdose or whatever, and it was like, let that sink in, and it's so real. And one of my favorite things he said was just like, children are the first hurt and the last helped. So that kind of fueled me a little bit. I'm like, okay, this is what really yanks at me about addiction. And I'm, maybe I could relate a little bit.
Yeah, why don't you, if you don't mind, why don't you kind of tell us where you're coming from in that, if people haven't heard some of the,
As much as a parent tries to like shelter their, if they do, I don't know. I did. I really tried to like hide.
I think there's a general protecting
Right,
identity or urge in most.
But a lot of it, once you're in
going.
that life, it's just kind of out of your control. But
Yeah.
I mean, I drove around, with my kids in the car. I was functional. We would go to the grocery store or I'd take them to school or I don't know, whatever. And that, that hit home. I remember my daughter, and she would stay at my mom's a lot and stuff like that while I did my thing. But I remember when she was 5 in kindergarten, she drew a picture, or no, it was just ripped pieces of paper, but it was an owl. And it was so good. And I was like, I've got to put this in a frame. And she said, "That's you, Mom. You're a night owl." And that just hit my heart so hard. Like, as much as I've tried to hide, kids feel and they see and they pick up on all the littlest things that you think that you've covered up, and
They're a lot more aware.
yeah. And so that, like I had that in my head, especially seeing those other children's artwork. It just, I think just being a mom too, it's like you don't ever want to hurt your children or put them in a dangerous position or, whatever. But when you are completely and helplessly addicted to drugs, whether you want to admit it or not, kids get neglected in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah. So, it just really hit home for me. And I just love kids. I'm serious. I'm like the weird baby lady. Like, people are like, "Oh, God, there she is." I'm like, "A baby!" I love babies! You know what I mean? I'm like, what's her name on We're the Millers? I'm going to hold that baby. I'm going to get that baby. So, that's, and that was just an eye-opener for me. Like, hey, I might want to do something with kids. Because... I actually watched a fellow member, a mom in recovery's daughter last night, and it's important to me to help other moms, who are like me, and just give their children love and nurture them, and let them know that everything is gonna be all right. And I had to send her a little shout out the other day on Facebook because I'm watching this mom and I'm watching her work really hard, and I know, I've fallen off and come back, and fallen off and come back, and that's just just that in itself is just completely stressful. You want it so bad, but, I don't know. So, yeah, the education conference was complete, and I got to stand there and pose and flex with Arnold's statue, so I thought that was pretty hot.
Dang, lucky. Good thing I wasn't there.
Extreme.
They would have been like, "Which one's Arnold?" Right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
And it was gay. It was still like Gay Pride week there, and I wanted to like paint Arnold's toenails like rainbow.
Oh, that would have been
And
awesome.
distracted
Awesome.
we had a really good time.
Then they would have been like at your job. They'd been like, "Have you ever been charged with a crime?" And they'd be like, "SJ, what's this one?" Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what they'd call
Destruction
that.
of-
Yeah.
Felony
Yeah.
vandalism.
Yeah.
It's intense.
Well,
I'm like, I
let's-
wanted him to celebrate.
Yeah.
When you really look at the details, it wasn't that bad.
You can remove it with nail polish remover.
Oh, you're like, oh shoot, is the varnish coming off?
Oh, serious.
So actually, I took an app. I actually took a picture of C, and I did an app, and I made them all rainbow, and then I put, because,
There you go.
That's awesome.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you talked about being kind of in the midst of addiction, having children, kind of keeping track of that. Do you have any idea of how to approach just even the topic of substances with kids, or obviously the DARE program, the whole war on drugs didn't really work out. Did they, even on the conference you went to?
We'd like to congratulate drugs for winning.
For winning the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they give you any tools or kind of talk about maybe what age or how to approach that?
Well, one of the coolest things that the kind of demonstration that he did was he has this little duffel bag, and it was like full of rocks, and each rock had like pain, hurt, sorrow, whatever, but it was really heavy, and he would have the kids hold it because a lot of kids feel like, you know, my mom, you know, instantly I remember being a kid and there being problems in my home, and it was instant responsibility to me, like it has to be because I'm doing something wrong or whatever. So a lot of kids that come from, you know, addicted homes, you know, instantly assume responsibility, like it's got to be something I'm doing. And so you have like those kids that like try to overcompensate at school, or they try to do better or whatever. But he would let them hold that bag like around their neck and walk with it, and he would let them know like, this is what your parents have been carrying around since they were small like you. And they're like, oh, like this was before me, this was, you know what I mean? And I thought that was really, really cool. He said he had some problems going through the airport with a bag of rocks.
Yeah.
And that was pretty funny. But you know, my 12-year-old daughter just came up from Texas for the month of July. And you know, and I go to meetings, you know, and you know, she asked me, you know, why do you go there? And because in her eyes, it's like, man, my mom's back. She's, you know, everything I ever wanted, and da-da-da. So she's like, why do you still have to go there? And I told her that because after a while, it's not about me. It's about me helping someone else. And she was like, oh, you know what I mean? And so that was kind of, you know, I don't know, kind of a little bit helped her understand it a little bit. You know, I need to be there. I need to be present if someone, you know, needs me. And there was a guy talking about taking his kids to meetings, and he was always worried that she was going to hear stuff. And he said he's at one meeting, and he said something about drugs. She was like, "You did drugs?" You know what I mean? And he's like, "Why do you think we come here?" And she's like, "What?" You know, because I mean that's, you know, because when we get better, it's hard for kids to even, you know, fathom, like my mom, you know, like you know, we are very pure and amazing in our kids' eyes. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's why I think it's so important, like when parents get clean, to sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but just build that trust back up with their kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Come back when you say you're going to come back. Mm-hmm. Show up when you say you're going to show, or just whatever, because you know what I mean? Like kids get you know, a little leery, like they don't trust, you know, because if you can't trust your mom, like who in life can you trust? And so I don't know, I'm just all about like just rebuilding the parent-child foundation. It's just it's so important, and it's important to a parent's recovery as well. I've seen such a change in all my kids. My daughter was actually talking to her other sister in Texas, and I had to smile about it, but her mom was like picking up some wine or something. She's like, well, my mom is sober. And I was just like another room, like, you know, and I actually talked to her dad the other day, and he's like, man, they go back and forth. My mom's sober. Your mom's not. Well, they just go back and forth, and I'm like, you know, it makes me really happy that my children, you know, I'm at a place where they can be proud of me today. So
My mom could beat up your mom. Silence.
That's true. That's true.
Probably.
That's true. So.
And then so in the last year, you were playing some intense sports, some really intense sports, and got injured.
I did.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Well, I got a phone call that, and then when I saw this team, they were actually at the Wednesday market one Wednesday, and like a bunch of people that I knew from living here years ago. And I was like, man, next year I'm joining that team. That's a good
softball.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And So I think it was like maybe mid-July, I got a call that, hey, we've made it to state, but we don't have enough players. Can you fill in? And granted, I didn't play for a lot of years. Like, I think the last time I played was like 3rd grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it had been a while, but I'm like, you know
And
what I mean?
I-
Like, I'm competitive.
Yeah.
I hadn't played on a team sport for a long time. I was really excited about it.
Yeah. I just to interject real quick, I was at the softball games like a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to this guy who had a daughter that plays, and he had played in years prior, and he said that like women are like golden tickets in the softball league because there's not a lot of them and they're required, right?
Right.
So it's like you have to alternate in that way. So he's like, man, you get a girl that can play softball. It's like you got to do everything you can to keep her.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure they're like, okay, we got this girl that I think can play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought, if anything, like I can run. Like, really fast.
And I'm sure you can hit the ball.
Well,
She can swing fast.
I can swing fast.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I can bring something. You know what I mean?
If not anything, a positive attitude.
Right. I'm a little out of practice, but I mean, I'll pick it up. So I did a couple practice games, and we went to Anchorage. And I think we were like in our second, we hadn't even started the tournament yet, but we were going in, the coach was like, all right, nobody get hurt, and I can't say anything except for like, I was way out of practice. I was not as, I don't know how you say it, like agile as I used to be, not as flexible, definitely, pretty out of practice. So, I was running to catch a grounder, went to change positions, and my knee completely buckled under me, and I laid there and watched the ball roll past me. I was angry, I was so mad, and I had no idea that I had actually, like, really, really hurt myself. I went to the, I remember I went to Providence, and, they took x-ray, nothing, and I remember they gave me some pain medication, and, I've never been one to be, I never really liked opiates at all. Like, there was never my thing, but, they kicked in, and I remember going, did it just get hot in here? And my mom's like, we're outside, Sarah. She's like, we're not in anywhere. Like, and I'm like, okay, I better sit down.
Yeah.
But, that was just a single little time thing. And then, I just started taking Tylenol. And I came back down to Soldotna and was referred to a orthopedic guy. And I remember when they came back after doing the MRI, and she's like, okay, you have a torn intermeniscus, a torn MCL, a torn ACL, microfractures in both your tibia and femur. I'm like, I'm a new patient. I go, I think you have the wrong chart. And she turned her laptop around and had a picture of me, and I was like, what? I was in shock.
I have a twin?
I was so surprised. I thought they were going to be like, dude, it's a sprain. Like, suck it up. Like, you're fine. And I did. I opted to have the surgery, being that in recovery, I like to, I've always been a person that loves going to the gym, and I love lifting, and I like competing and things. So I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and get this fixed. It was traumatizing. I hope I never ever have to go through that again. So I had, orthopedic or what is that? Where they don't actually like.
Oh, arthroscopic.
Orthoscopic, excuse me. Surgery. And it was weird because he found a dent in, I don't remember I think it was like my femur, and he's like, are you sure you've never injured your knee before? And I'm like, never had any problems, but cleaned that up, and I had a hard time. I had a hard time not with taking the pain meds, but just getting my pain under control. I hadn't been in that much pain in a really long time.
Yeah.
But I was able to, use my resources, and I have a neighbor that checked on me all the time, and cat that was semi-helpful.
Yeah.
And you said off recording earlier that you basically just took pain medication that was prescribed for a week, and then you just...
I think it was 10 days. I think they give you like a 10-day.
Sure.
And I think like the last 3 days, I would try not to. The thing about your knee is like, I couldn't get comfortable when I slept.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm like elevated, not elevated. Side, nope, that's bending it too far this way, and things like that. So I mean, it affects everything. So I think like the last 3 days, I would take a leave during the day and maybe just my pain meds at night, just so I could sleep well.
Yeah.
Because not being able to sleep was really bad.
Yeah.
It's especially difficult with your ACL because like that's accounts for a lot of like your structure. You know, it's that one that goes like
Stability.
straight through. Yeah. So like, if you don't have a strong ACL, like you can't lay this way without having some give in there and like creating some.
Yeah. It was people. You don't. It's just like, when your abs are really sore.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I'm talking
Oh, yeah.
about?
I
And
definitely know.
He doesn't know.
And you go to cough and you're like, oh, you forget
yeah,
like how much you
sucks.
use your
Yeah,
abs. You're like,
yeah.
oh, ow. Or, but one of the funny things is after I got out of surgery, my buddy Jeff Baker, he's had a lot of knee surgeries, and so I opted for him to be there with me in recovery, and to tell me how do I do it? What do I do? He goes, you need to read this pamphlet when you get home, and he put it in my backpack. So when I got home, I'm getting settled, and I got my ice machine going, and I pull this pamphlet out, and it's like, thank your donator, and I'm like, I thought he was dead because I got a cadaver ACL, and I'm like, thank you. I'm like, I thought he was dead, and I was like so emotional.
Oh my gosh.
Dang, that's crazy.
But you can write a letter and thank the family for like the ACL that you got or something. And I was just like, dude, this is so weird.
Yeah, yeah.
And then for Jeff to be like, you gotta read that when you get home, I'm like, you creep, you're mean. But
So in the midst of all the pain and stuff, did you ever think about turning back to using, or did that not even cross your mind?
nah.
Do you have tools that keep that out of your head, or is it just not something you think about really anymore? Like you're far along enough.
It like I said, my poisons were specific, and don't get me wrong, I've pretty much tried everything you could ever. I've probably done stuff you guys haven't even heard of, but yeah, but it just, I don't know, it just wasn't in my mind.
Awesome.
I mean, I thought about it did cross my mind like, hey, if I don't take all these, I could probably get a good maybe $7 to $10 a piece.
right, yeah. No, just little
And
things like that.
and I'm
right.
like, oh my God, Sarah, like, why would you even think
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, just one of those things.
Yeah, it just
Invasive
kicks in,
thoughts.
and then I'm like, oh,
Whoa.
what? Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Back up a bit.
Yeah.
Right. We better change the topic.
But a lot of people were, I went back into care transitions, the detox center, just not because I was having a problem taking the I was having a problem keeping up. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you take this every 6 hours or 8 hours. Like, I was tired, and I just would forget or whatever. And so I couldn't get my pain under control. I was, it was a traumatizing amount of pain. I could not believe how much pain I was in. I was really surprised. And I look back at pictures, and I'm like, well, no wonder it hurt, because it was huge and ugly. And so I went back into care transitions just to kind of get help with keeping my ice machine filled, and just getting help, just getting around. But they were like, oh my God, like they couldn't believe, like, oh my God, they prescribed you this. And honestly, you guys, like it really just took the edge off. You know what I mean? Like the pain wasn't that intense. I personally don't like what opioids do to my psyche, because I start having these weird dreams where my dreams kind of blend with reality. I mean, and I've heard other people talk about that before. Some people obviously don't mind.
Right, yeah.
They're like, this is cool. But I don't know. I don't want that feeling. I don't like it. And so I was actually kind of looking forward to not having to take them. And within the 7 to 10 days, I was driving again. I was back at work. Some nights were kind of rough, but I don't know. remember that life hurts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Life hurts, and I'm gonna get through this. And since then, it almost kind of turned my inner healing like into like an outer, like a manifestation like on the outside, so I could like remember like healing takes time.
Yeah.
So it's something that I just kind of was able to remind myself often, like, hey,
Yeah.
this is going to take time to repair, just like my life, just like my heart, just, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so, and it kind of just reminded me to take better care of my body. And so, yeah. The physical therapist that I had actually played for the winning softball team.
Oh,
I
nice.
want to send a shout out to her, Amanda from DQ. You know what I mean? And so I saw her and I was like, oh, wow. I was like, this is awesome. She's like, I remember you. And I'm like, oh, man, come on.
Right.
But she was really awesome and really did a good job in my physical therapy. So,
Nice.
yeah.
What have been some of the like concerning with respect to like your recovery specifically? What have been kind of a few things that maybe surprises? You know, have there been any like surprises in the last year that you're like, you know, thinking back a year ago, and I thought like, and if I was to think about my recovery and what that looks like what are some of the things that have surprised me, or what have been some of the things you expected that fell right into place?
So I was actually just kind of reminded today. Today would have been my sister's 34th birthday. She passed away on October 4th, 2012, due to an overdose. And after that happened in 2013, early 2013, I came down and went through Serenity for the first time. And you know, I had never been in an inpatient treatment. I had never even given that a try. And there were so many wonderful things that I learned. You know what I mean? And my life changed so much. But even though there was all, you know, so much good stuff, there were a lot of things that kind of resumed. And one of those things was my horrible choice of relationships. You know, which is a huge trigger for me, is relationships, communication, you know, all that. And so when I went back in last year, one of the biggest things that my counselor told me was like, you have got to be honest, like, or you're gonna die. Like, you're gonna die. And I'm not talking about just like, you know, little untruths or lies, but like my whole life was painting a picture, like putting glitter on a turd. Like, I did everything I could to make my life look like everything it wasn't. You know, when I was just dying inside. And I'm talking about like going and speaking at treatment centers while using, you know what I mean? Like, just because even though I had relapsed, it didn't change how passionate I was for recovery. It's just, I pretty much wanted it for everyone else more than I even wanted it for myself. You know, I'm like, well, if I keep helping people, then I'll catch my snap. And, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup, which I've said many times, and it's huge for me. So I have to be honest. So coming out, I was going through a custody thing, and I had to go to court, and I believe, like, as human beings, like, we don't want to let people down. We don't want to, you know, tell the truth, because sometimes it's so ugly. But in court, I was, not only from my own admittance to my own past and mistakes, I was able to just be honest. They asked me some really hard questions, and so in that, I found one of the coolest things, and I believe this is like the spiritual part of it, is I didn't have to worry about like what I didn't tell the truth about or what I lied about. As empty as I felt, like, all the next day, I was grateful, because like I didn't have to go, oh crap, you know what I mean? Like, I lied about this, or I lied about that. Or what if they found out? They're going to ask me about this. None of that. You know what I mean? So laying all of my yuck out on the table, it was still okay because there it was. And so whatever decision the judge made, I could be in acceptance and be like, okay, well, this is where I'm going to go from here. And I think because of that raw honesty, it gave me a lot of credibility. And so that has been something that's been huge this time, is that raw honesty, immediately admitting like, hey, I kind of, I wasn't really completely honest about this. I gotta come to you with this. I mean, I don't know, it felt like a spiritual experience. Like I didn't have to worry anymore. And so that's been really huge this time, because I didn't even know that I was capable of honesty, to tell you the truth.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or
You know what
I
mean?
imagine
I was
you
so
may...
afraid to hurt people or let them down or change their opinion of me or maybe that shock of like, wow, you are fake and like you haven't been honest and da-da-da. I was so afraid to let that happen that it kind of kept me sick.
Sure.
For the most part. So that's been a huge thing for me.
Sounds
I even
like-
got this is my anchor, my honesty anchor tattoo. So I get to see that every day. And
Sweet.
yeah.
That's cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Really well done. I've been like eyeballing it.
Oh yeah, I actually.
Did you see my tattoo?
I don't even know. I can't even read it.
It sounds like what you kind of did, and I think I've heard some people say this kind of idea before, is they reevaluate these, like what they hold as kind of their key ideas or their key beliefs, and they kind of reevaluate them with the experience that they've gained and like the new kind of health that they've gained, and they say like, is there a way, like, have I been approaching and practicing these ideas and beliefs in the way that I can best understand them? And sometimes that's no, sometimes it's like I thought I was being honest, but that wasn't quite honesty. And then, other times I think it doesn't even have to be like necessarily that profound. It's just like, was what I was doing, like with respect to honesty or hard work or like good effort or compassion, any of those kind of things that you hold key to yourself, like, or that you're aiming for. It's like, have I been doing that? Like, have I understood them in the ways that I can understand them now? Because I think as you get older, and especially like in recovery as well, like you start to get new perspectives as you go along, and you start to get more experiences, and you think, you know what, like, because I've had times where, and I can't name like the idea off the top of my head, but or like the belief, but I've had times where it's like, man, I thought I was doing that a long time ago, and it turns out I wasn't. It's like, or like even things like, man, I thought my life was hard then, like my life's hard now, or like, you know what I'm saying? Just other ways around where you evaluate things that you thought you were doing or you thought you knew, and it turns out to be. So I guess that's one. I mean, all of this has been great, but that's one thing I think that's kind of like, aha. Sometimes when we're recording, it's like, man, aha. There's like something cool that really comes up to you. Like, I haven't thought about that. And I think one of the things is like, I'm not like going to write a step for people in recovery or something, but I would suggest like to people in recovery to like, what are some of the things that you have held, whether internally or like verbally as well, held as like a key practice or a key belief, and like reevaluate that. Like, what does that look like now? Like, what does that look like going forward? Like, what are some of the, like, are you doing that now? Like, does that mesh with your practices?
I think we've heard that before too. I think.
No, I just made it up.
No.
You've never heard this before.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
No,
what was it
because,
though?
Danielle. Remember when we recorded with Danielle? She did a big piece on reflection, and just how much like within even the 12 steps, like reflection is encouraged. Because like until you like really do like sit down and reflect or like see something, you're like, man, do I still do that? Like that kind of brings you into like reevaluating, asking yourselves those questions that like during the day to day, like you either don't have like feel like you don't have time, or you just kind of get caught up and swept in and like life that you don't really ever sit back and really reflect. You know what I mean?
I've had a lot of reflection. Just I think it comes like the longer you stay clean, it's like pretty. I've had a lot of people in the program tell me, they're like, oh, I'm having like the worst day ever, and they're like, oh, you're right where you're supposed to be, and I'm like. But you know what I mean? It's all about that spiritual growth or whatever. But I've thought about my life today, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so stressed out, or this, that, and the other, and And then I thought back to like what I used to do to, keep everything under control or whatever. And one of the coolest things too for me was when my counselor kind of pointed out to me, and she's like, even as a kid, like you were groomed to like placate and make the family okay, and you know what I mean, and I don't know, just, and that was really helpful because I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder I've just tried to like keep everybody happy, and I don't want to, upset anyone, and that was just kind of eye-opening for me, and I'm like, wow, I had a lot of trauma as a kid, and I assumed responsibility, like, okay, it's my job. I became like the family clown and gotta, make everybody happy and take care of everyone. And so it's just nice to look at things that you're like, oh my God, I'm such a piece of crap for doing that. I was so fake, or I was such a liar. It's like, okay, well, we lie because we're scared, and we hide things because we're scared or we're ashamed. And to have someone just from an outside perspective, like just tell you like, hey, you know what I mean? Like, you're not a bad person, you were sick, and this is why you did these things, and this is what we're gonna do from here on out. And it's just so helpful. Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to helping people look at things from the other side as well. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Fear is weird, because I mean, it's a little bit of fear is healthy, fear keeps you from doing some things that might otherwise kill you. I mean, a little bit, right? I mean, I think like you eat a food, it makes you really sick. Like you got a little fear to eat it again, and it's in some instances that's a really good idea, like especially like going back in time a little bit, like you eat a certain plant, and like or some kind of food, and you're like,
well,
turns out your species
is like
in
in addiction, like I've heard so many people like, oh my God, I'm never drinking again.
right.
You know what I mean? Like they get like alcohol poisoning, or they get so sick or whatever, and they're like, oh my God, I'm never drinking again. It's like, hey, I thought, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, I don't know. We have good forgetters. I have an amazing forgetter. It works so good.
Yeah.
So.
And then it's you hear like. You get to this is an interesting thing, I think. You get the people are like, on your deathbed, you hear that, right? Like, in your last days, you're going to wish this and this and this, Mm-hmm. And I've also heard, and I've always thought, okay, like, I wish I would have done this or done this. And so you think, like, okay, so in order to not have those regrets, I want to make sure that I do those things, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to spend time with my family. I want to, like, be sure to take the risks that I'm kind of afraid to take now. All of that's good advice, I think, to some degree. However, I also heard this thing the other day, and it's like, man, you spend, like, 2 days on your deathbed. Like, the rest of the time, you're, like, living life, and, like, you're navigating that, like, with kind of the best, like, learning that you've taken on and that like have worked out and sometimes don't work out, and sometimes when you don't take risks because like it's probably not going to work out, Mm-hmm. So I think like I don't know, that's something I've been thinking about too, because it's real trendy, and I'm not saying it's bad at all. It's real trendy to be like, you gotta go for it, you gotta take that risk, you gotta and then I'm just like, man, some risks shouldn't be taken. But I mean, there's a balance, right? So I don't know. Right. Ramblin' Rick, back at it.
I love your style.
Yeah.
I think there's some weight to that though. I mean, there definitely is a balance to like just taking really like, yeah. I mean, you should be willing and like to kind of take those risks, but you should also be willing to calculate those risks as to how much they're really gonna pay off versus how much it really might just cause some strife. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's some thought that.
I will tell you something that I went through recently that was very eye-opening to me was, I will be driving, great morning, got the kid to daycare on time, not late for work, got my tunes going, everything's fine. And I was just getting like these rushes of like anxiety to where I was like, I could feel my insides just shaking and I couldn't breathe, and I was like, where is this coming from? I cannot figure this out. Like what's going on? I mean, things are going smooth. And it occurred to me that I, especially because it happens a lot, it was happening a lot while driving, is I never was going where I said I was going. I would drive to some really dark and shady places to feed my addiction. I would be driving high. I mean, and so I believe that almost like I created like a little bit of my own PTSD by constantly living in fear. I was a fear someone was going to know I was high. I was a fear that, you know what I mean, that I was going to crash my car. I was a fear that they were going to rob me when I went and picked up the stuff. I was afraid all the time.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
to think about that and be like, okay, you know what I mean? This is, and my body remembers. Your body remembers
Yeah.
that fear, that constant fear. I was afraid to use. I was afraid to not use.
Right.
I was afraid of my friends, and I don't mean like some like, you know, like weirdness. I had some really shady friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was
Some very
afraid.
real and
I was afraid that my
necessary
dad
fear.
was going to go in my room and find where I had my stuff hidden. I was afraid, you know, to go to work. I was afraid not to go to work. I mean, my whole life was fear-based.
Yeah.
And it was all around that I was not in right living and not doing what I was supposed to. And so just becoming aware of that. And also, I had a counselor remind me, like, you've been out of your body. You've been out of your body for a long time, and you're coming back into your body. And so becoming aware of, like, how living that life affected you. And it was just so eye-opening for me, because I'm like, oh, when your life gets really calm, your body's like, okay, I'm ready to let this go. And so that's, I think, why I would get like these rushes where I wanted to pull over. I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't know what it was about. But I don't know, just to become aware that, you know what I mean, like what I've actually done to my heart and soul and body for so long. And just the fact that I love, one of the things I say is like, as long as we follow this way, like we don't have anything to fear. You know what I mean? And just reminding myself, like, hey, you don't have to be afraid of that no more.
Yeah.
I had a friend in Anchorage who they found that I used to go meet in Mountain View. He died all by himself, you know, all alone in the dark with nobody. And that just, I think that's what kind of triggered that in me, because, you know, as many friends in that life, like, as you think you have, like, you know what I mean? Like, it really brought back some stuff for me. And as sad as it made me, like, it made me really grateful. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody makes it out.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
people are gonna die. And, you know, and I think about that too. Like, my sister, like, she doesn't get a second chance to be a good mom. She doesn't get a second chance to hug her parents. She doesn't get anything. And we're like, it's just done. It's over. And I do. And so I try to remind myself of that a lot, as much as I can. Like, you know what I mean? I've gotten a lot of second chances, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And, you know, they run out. They run out. And, today I can honestly say, and this is the weird part, is something I'm like, why didn't I think about using today? That's so weird. Because, you know, every day, like, it'll pop into my head, like, something that happened either while I was high and some days it doesn't. And I'm like, hey, that was weird. Like, how did I have a whole day without even thinking about it once? And, which is weird because, you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty normal. And a lot of people, I also went through this phase, I call it the cake and eat it too phase, where you're like, I'm doing so good. You know, all these people are barbecuing. One beer or whatever, I should be able to have that. I should be able to have that because I'm doing great and it's not going to hurt anything and blah, blah, blah. And I thought about, I've been at this phase before, I call it cake and eat it too phase, and I thought about, like, what did I do last time where I didn't remedy that? And next thing you know, my cake and eat it too phase was it was just the eat it too. Yeah,
It was
just
gone. No cake.
Yeah, there was no cake. Cake was gone.
Party's over, you're just in the dark,
digested
cake alone, sad.
Me on the blinds, like,
Yeah.
You the cake man?
you know, and then that's just real stuff. And I'm like, what did I do that I could do differently this time?
Yeah.
And it was talk about it.
Sure.
And so I shared about it at a meeting, and it literally lost like half its power because I was
Nice.
like, I was ashamed, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
I didn't want people to be like, why, you are doing so good. Why would you even think about that? I'm thinking about that because 21 years of my life, every
That's how-
single
yeah.
day.
That's how I
That
roll.
was my life. That's what I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
I stayed high and did everything I could to protect that dysfunction
Yeah.
and keep it going.
That was
You know?
your normal, so it's hard.
Exactly. And so now when your life's calm and stuff, you're like, you want to stir something up maybe, like, yeah. So it's
I knew you were gonna say that. He
chaos.
says, no,
Eric's
I
pointing
joke
at
to
Eric.
him that I hate conflict, and he says that I love conflict.
Yeah, stir that pot.
Eric
Yeah.
exists in
100%.
like Eric like creates Eric subconsciously, consciously,
Hey, we're on the air, so
cognitive
just
or
be
not.
careful here.
Just like little things, dude. Not like big life, like altering drama, but like, you know, he'll be kind
It's
of
his
like
normal.
he'll get frustrated a little bit.
No.
He'll get a little bit frustrated, a little bit something, and then he'll just be like out of nowhere, hasn't brought it up in like 2 weeks, doesn't even really think about it. Why is your things all over the place? What this? You gotta get this out of here. You gotta like. I literally will have like my notebook or something on the like coffee table
Stir
for
the pot.
2 weeks. He won't say anything for like the first like week. You
Until
know,
it's just like,
until like
you need
all
to
of a
move
sudden,
out.
dude. Yeah. All
Till
of a
it's
sudden,
so big.
why didn't you do the dishes? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Did you do this? Did you do that? And like everything that like we've been like talking about and like that we're on
You
the same
didn't do
page
anything
about, we're
besides
all
you're gonna
just,
sleep.
like,
You're gonna sleep till noon every day.
like the first day. Like, and we
my
literally
whole life.
He sleeps till like 11 for like 2 days in a row, and I remember just being like, "So is that all you're gonna do these days? Just sleep all day? Don't you have like anything to do? You're
Yeah.
just gonna sleep."
And at this point, like the grants like hadn't come all the way through yet. We were in like a little bit of just like a waiting process. Like there literally was like. We were in, like, there was like, all right, we can't work right now. Like, just
like
like
a
these,
week.
yeah, like
Ish,
just like
maybe,
1 week,
yeah.
like we can't work. And out of those weeks, like I got up mostly, like there was like 3 days, dude, out of like 7, where I woke up at like 11, 12, or 1, just because like we had nothing to do. And he's like, "Just all you're gonna do? You just sleep in all the time, like looking around for things to make me do." Like,
Because I have responsibilities, you know. I mean, I have responsibilities.
No, he didn't. He's voluntarily studying for his law school admission test, which granted is like a huge investment. And, like we all get it's important. And like we don't bother him when he studies, but like the second he's done studying, he really enjoys creating some chaos and bothering everybody else. Because all of
I
a
got
sudden,
2
like,
words for you. Not guilty.
right, yeah.
Careful, this one over here. Like Eric.
Should I be talking about this?
I got some new dishwasher packets though, and so now the dishes are super clean coming out of the dishwasher. So when I guess even as you're going, it sounds like one of the things is that when you're in recovery is that there may be a tendency to need to feel as if or is there like some pressure? We're running low on time, but do you feel pressure to like? She's completely, and I guess maybe not a good word for it, but I'll use it anyway, fixed. I mean, she's fixed. She's no broken pieces anymore. And then you're feeling broken and you're like, there's like some conflict there, right? I mean,
Well, yeah, it's still hard to admit, like, hey, I'm not doing so good. I have had to admit, like, I've had some, like, I don't know, they call it the pink cloud. Like, when you first get, clean, you're like, life is so good because, I mean, it's definitely good from where you just came from.
Yeah.
I've always been in the hot seat. In my family, in the courthouse,
Yeah.
wherever. Like, I was always in some sort of, turmoil. And so, you get people that are like, oh my God, I look up to you so much. And then I'm like, oh,
I don't
You
look
know,
up to me.
right?
So
But, the thing is I think that's where it's really important to put yourself in the middle of the herd. Like, get involved in your recovery community. Get in there and, like, because a lot of times I've had, I actually did this to my daughter the other day. I pointed out, I was like, like when you get nervous, you just talk like a baby, right? And she's like, no, I don't. Yeah. And she's like, well, I didn't know them. And I said, I know, but I'm pointing that out because I have had to have people point things out for me. They're like, hey, you know that you, they're like, fix your face. Or
Sure.
like, you look really mad. I'm like, oh my gosh, I do? Because I don't know. And so when you involve yourself in the recovery community, it's really helpful to have people on the outside, let you know, like, hey, I'm really seeing I can tell like something's off. Are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Or man, keep up the good work, or the encouragement comes in. Just, and so I think that's just really important. But it's hard. It's hard to admit, like, hey, I've been thinking about using.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It feels embarrassing, like even just to say it, like here, like, I mean, and because in your mind you're like, why would I ever think about that? Oh well, I had someone tell me the other day, they're like, I've been calling you, and I'm like, well, I sleep now. Hello. Because they're calling down from Texas, and so it's like the time changed. I was like, well, I sleep now.
Yeah.
FYI, you know.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Not at 5 hours of the night, so.
No longer a night owl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Yeah, thank you so much. This has been, it's awesome to check in a year later. So we're going to be recording more of these. And if you, like I said, if you haven't heard SJ's first podcast, you'll go there. It's on the feed or whatever. So
Rewind.
yeah. So you can go listen to that and just kind of see, a year later. So now, how long before we just completely close up? How much clean time do you have now? About
My clean date is 2/22/18.
so.
And honestly,
okay.
that's a while.
Yeah.
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 So you're
Play over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. It's been a long time since I've had a significant amount of clean time. I mean, I could go a good, 18 hours or so before.
Yeah.
Before I'm like, ooh, I need a little something.
Yeah.
But and it's hard. Like I get invited out all the time, and I personally am not one of those people, like, I can be around people. Like, I still like to go watch football, and with my dad, and, he's on the other side of the coin.
Sure.
Plus years. But, it just, I don't know. It doesn't bother me. But it is hard, People are like, it's so crazy how you have to explain why you don't drink. You don't have to explain why you're not doing no meth today or anything else, but alcohol is just so socially accepted. And
especially in this community.
and you feel very like kind of isolated when you're like, no, thank you, I don't drink. I'll have a ginger ale with lemon. Like so yeah.
I
So
got
it's
that
hard.
vibe.
It's hard,
Yeah, I get like a tonic and a lime,
Right, 'cause it looks-
or like
it looks kind of fancy, like
and
a
it
drink.
tastes good, and it's
No,
like
it
I'm not.
Whatever.
Well, I'm not
Yeah.
drinking
No
it.
one asks
I'm not really drinking a lot
Yeah.
of like. I'm not really drinking a lot of that at home. I'm not like cutting myself up a lime and like
Yeah, but you
having
should.
that at home.
Yeah, if you
so
put a little
yeah,
piece of
I
fruit
should
on
start
any
doing it.
drink. They like won't ask you any questions.
Sure.
Put it in a tiny glass.
Like, hey, getting
Yeah.
wild, huh? You're like, like, yeah, wow.
I remember I was at in Fairbanks a couple weeks ago for that CrossFit thing, and we went out, and it was a good time. And I remember, like, I wasn't drinking, and it had like a couple like club sodas, and then I remember it was so weird because it was like 11 o'clock, and nobody was really getting turned, so to speak. And but I remember this was what was weird. I was like, man, I'm that guy. I remember there being like a sliders truck pulled up, like a food truck, and
Yeah.
I was like that was like my fix, dude. I'm like, yeah, sliders. Yeah. It's just like, so this is me now.
And I've told people before too, like, here, let me go ahead and play that tape forward.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
You have a drink and go home. I have a drink and never go home.
Right.
I end up, in treatment. So let's just,
Yeah.
I'm going to enjoy this ginger ale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to play that tape forward, even though I think it can be hard to do, So yeah. Well, thank you so much, SJ.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, we'll have to definitely do this again. I'd like to keep checking in with people. I think the goal is to, because I think a lot of the listeners, they're like, you get a lot of different stories, and they all add to the big picture.
And to the
But
previous
then,
story.
yeah.
Very helpful.
Yeah. But doing like 2 with the same person a year, or so later, I think helps listeners really maybe form a bit of a relationship. Like, oh, I know this girl. Like,
Oh, yeah, I listened
like
to her last one.
right. Yeah.
great.
So that would be cool if develop some more
And that's
relationships
cool
in
that
that
you're
regard.
going into peer support now too. So
Yeah.
people that actually
I'm
are.
so excited.
Yeah, we're
We'll see
excited.
you around.
You're
Oh,
perfect.
yes, you will.
And if you guys are listening and you have some clean time and you do want to potentially share your own story, we are looking for other people that want to record as well. You can text or call Aaron at 406-599-8675.
And
Amen,
if you
brother.
have no clean time at all and you are
Yep.
looking to get some help, please reach out. Or even if you just know someone and need some questions answered, please reach out and don't give up, because if there's still breath, there's still hope.
Amen. I didn't mean to say amen.
I love it.
Please cut that. Right on.
Of all the things, you want me to bleep it out?
I usually say amen like as
to
a
me,
joke.
amen,
Amen.
just means you agree.
Okay,
That's
word.
just-
Okay,
amen.
word. Amen.
Amen. Amen to that.